Good morning, Lake Houston area. This is John Ramoyne. I'm here supporting Bob with RadioKair, and we are continuing down the path of our honoring and supporting our veteran community. We are trying to spend time with veteran-owned businesses, with veteran-ran organizations to highlight what they do for our community, what they do for our environment, how they're improving the relationships between U.S. military as well as to our general public. This morning I have Michael Goodrich from Goodrich Financial Advisory, and we're going to talk a little bit about his service. We're going to talk a little bit about why he got into what he's doing, as well as what he gives back to, what he holds pride in, and then finally, how, of course, to get in contact with him. Mr. Goodrich, welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I appreciate you having me here this morning.
Yep. So I don't want to go any further until I talk about your service, and I want to talk specifically about my thank you for your service. I want to make sure you understand that's heartfelt. That's not a hollow thank you. You know, we've got Veterans Day coming up, and it's cute to wear desert sand camo shirts and, you know, all those kind of things. I get that that is an open thank you, and I know people are attempting to say the right thing. But what I'm going to tell you is, you made a choice when you were younger to serve our country in the military service, and I appreciate that. My family appreciates it. The main thing that I knew whenever I was younger is I hold my family very close to me, and it had been very difficult for me to go away for an extended period of time. You were willing to do that. So thank you for that, as well as, you know, the risks the known and unknown risks that are associated with military service. There's the known risk, hey, I could get hurt, right? And then sometimes there's an unknown risk of you know, damage in other ways that people don't know are going to happen to them. So I do appreciate your service, and I want to make sure you know that. And
I appreciate it.
And it's an honor for us to spend some time with our veterans, and this is the reason why we're doing it, right?
Well, appreciate it. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah. So, Mr. Michael, let's start with your service and okay, where'd you grow up? Where were you born and raised? Then you got into the service. Where were you deployed? How long did you serve? And then it'll go into the path of, you know, why you chose what you chose.
Awesome. Well, so I was born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. Lived there my entire childhood. Didn't move around a whole lot, unlike many other who served where they're military brats, so they hop around everywhere. I was fortunate enough I got to stay in one spot. Decided actually before my senior year even started that I was going to join the Air Force. So I signed into the delayed entry program before my senior year even started, and so kind of laughed to myself watching all the other kids run around trying to freak out what college they're going to get into. And I'm all right, I'm good. Like, well, where are you going? I'm going military. Like, I leave 9 days after we graduate. And so I had my birthday, my going away, and my graduation party all on the same day, and hopped on the plane and went down to San Antonio and went to basic.
Yeah.
And so that was June 19th, 2007.
So you go to San Antonio. Is that what made you fall in love with Texas, or how did you end up in Houston?
So fortunate enough, so my wife's family lives down here. And so whenever we would come to visit, I'm like, I love Texas. I mean, I flew all over the world, not an officer enlisted, so my job was to fix the planes and remind the pilots kindly to follow the checklist and stop trying to break it. But got to go all over the world, got to drive across the country. You know, with children, it's much easier to drive, you know, stationed in Idaho, drive all the way to North Carolina, or drive to Texas, or drive to Ohio. I got to see everything. I just like the opportunity down here a lot. The weather's pretty stable, near the water. It's a nice, large city. You can get out into the country pretty easily if you want to, you know, if you don't want to actually live in the city, but you want to be around people and have that opportunity and that commerce. It's just a great place to be.
Yeah. Well, we love having you. We love our area. I mean, you have, you know, you got basic in San Antonio, right? You got Fort Hood, holds the U.S. Army, one of the larger bases in the U.S. at Fort Hood. You've got, there are so many bases in military community here. It's different. I grew up in Dallas Fort Worth, and there is a lot of military, but not like Houston. Houston just grabs so many former veterans.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've heard this from maybe other guests you've had on or talking to the Houston Veterans Chamber of Commerce, but Houston's number 2 for veterans in the area, second only to LA, and they're flooding here pretty quickly.
Yep.
So
exiting and very quickly. So okay. So you go through basic. Did you ever deploy? Did you ever go overseas?
Yeah. So I was stationed in Mountain Home, Idaho, working F-15s. Actually, my first TDY, and so not deployment yet, but just temporary duty assignment. Came down to Fort Hood for Operation No Christmas when Bush was president to enforce a no-fly zone over his house. That was pretty cool. Those were 24-hour shifts. That was a lot of fun. But it was good banter between us and the pilots. But no, my first deployment was in 2012. I went to UAE. My job there as an aircraft electrician was to go stand up a back shop, go support the flight line there, and that was at the same time that Benghazi went down.
Yeah, that was we've seen the movies, and that's a rough situation. I don't want to get into the politics of it, but UAE, from my understanding, is pretty U.S. friendly. Is that correct? Or
They want us there.
Yeah,
they very much want us there.
Yeah.
I've
met people from that area.
You have Abu Dhabi, who's fairly religiously conservative, and then you have Dubai, which is fairly liberal, and so they enjoy U.S. protection so that they can continue to get tourism and kind of do whatever they want.
Okay. And then, me and you were talking before this, and you talked a little bit about what brought you into the financial advisory role. And then you said it aligns pretty well with what you did in the military. Can you explain that a little bit?
Oh, no, what I learned from the military.
Okay.
So when I joined the military, I didn't know anything about money. Nothing. I literally thought everybody financed everything. I had no idea people paid for anything with cash. Like, they teach you a little bit about compound interest in high school, and hey, this is how this works, and this is how a credit card works. I was like, oh, well, apparently, not making a whole lot of money as a E2, you're like, apparently everybody uses credit cards, so I'm going to learn how to use credit cards. And I literally would walk into, let's call it a supervisor's house. They had a big group thing, and everybody came over. I was looking around the house man, how do they afford payments on all this? This is wild. This is a lot of stuff. I seriously had no idea people saved up and bought things until I was up to my eyeballs in debt. Married, 2 children, had a ex-wife and or a previous marriage, and so I had a bunch of debt that I had from that marriage, and now I have children I need to take care of, and so I got really good at learning how to budget and how to go down to nothing, making $27,000 a year, and to pay all that off. And so that actually led me to volunteering to do a 365 in Korea. Sent my wife to her mom's house and literally just put every dime I was earning into paying off that debt for a year.
So when you say a 365 in Korea, are you saying a year in Korea?
Yeah, I went to Osan Air Base for a year.
Okay. All right. Yeah. It's just military terminology sometimes.
So it's not considered a standard deployment. You're only 2 locations that have 365s from the Air Force side is Turkey and Korea, just because they're not necessarily standard duty stations, but they're not quite the sandbox either. And so they sit in that middle ground.
Okay.
And so it's a deployment, but you do it longer.
Okay. So now let's talk a little bit about what you do and what you hope to change. I mean, I think it's not necessarily a competitive industry because it's all about relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there is a lot of people in that game. There's there's the big players, Edward Jones and Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, all those companies that do financial advice. And then what makes Goodrich different or contrast those type things?
Yeah, so first off, Goodrich Financial Advisory is a fee-only advisory. So that means that I don't do commission. I'm only getting paid by the client, and it's very hands-on and in the weeds. So I charge for my financial plans. I'm not handing you a financial plan, and then you got to question whether or not what my motives are if I recommend you insurance. If I recommend you insurance, I'm not getting a dime. Okay. And so that's kind of how that's different. And then I've decided to specialize in small business owners. So I might be crazy in the eyes of other financial advisors, but I enjoy the chaos of dealing with business owner financials. So I enjoy going through their P&L statements and their balance sheets and their cash cycle and the working capital, helping them formulate a plan and a budget based on their business to move forward, whether it's hire employees, can they afford to buy new equipment, where are they leaking money at, and then how are they then paying themselves? So do they want to retain employees by bringing on benefits? Is this a solo firm where they want to do a solo 401k, or they want to maximize how much money they're putting away for retirement? What does their investments need to look like? Is this a risky business where the highs are real high and the lows are real low, so we need to put money away into nice conservative savings? Or is this business very stable, almost franchise-like, and then they can take a little bit more risk inside of their investments when we're trying to get them to where they want to go for their retirement? And so that's kind of how I approach that.
Yeah. So I don't know if you know this, but you're from kind of the other side of the metro, and what you may not know is RadioKair, myself, Bob, are heavily involved in chambers of commerce.
That's amazing.
So we're heavily involved with Greater East Montgomery County Chamber, which I met a lot of your peers at the other day. And then also partnership like Houston, which is a few blocks down. We're involved with that group. But as you know, chambers of commerce are mostly small business owners.
They are.
Yep. So it's a
Absolutely.
lot of small business owners trying to influence each other as well as the general public and political sometimes affiliations and those kind of things. Do you utilize those type of marketing strategies in what you do to engage new clients, or how are you grabbing new clients?
So it is a little bit of that, although when I do show up to chambers of commerce, it's not like, I'm selling a product where everybody potentially is my customer. Because of the level of finances I do with some of these small businesses, I'm not looking to bring on a total of, a bunch of new customers. Like my bandwidth until the end of January, I maybe could onboard 3.
Okay.
Like that's it. And so the client needs to fit, the fees need to make sense, the value add needs to be there. So I take my time when I'm looking for clients. The relationship is extremely important.
Yep.
So
agree. Yeah. I mean, there's a few things that are very relationship driven, right? So there's your financial advisor typically, your doctor typically, your attorney.
Yeah. Yeah.
The rest of them, we just need to know how much it costs.
Yeah.
But those 3, you really want to know the person.
Especially, if you're going to let somebody not only get into your personal finances, but then your business finances, people are pretty protected. And so it's the relationship is definitely first and business is definitely second in that.
So I do have a question about what makes you different, right? So I understand the fee only structure, and I've heard that going around a bit. But what else makes Goodrich different than other financial advisors? What does it that? What do you do that maybe others don't, and how much better are you at those specific things?
So my bread and butter is global macro econ. So I love macroeconomics. I love studying portfolio construction, dynamics, correlation, and flows. So a lot of financial advisors, and some of them do manage their own money, which is very impressive, or some of them have their own dedicated chief investment officer, which is, again, very impressive. I also manually build, measure correlation for each client's portfolios to make sure they are tailored fit to their exact needs. So on top of providing business financial planning, personal financial planning, the wealth management side, even walking clients through if they want to do real estate, do they not want to do real estate, do they like income portfolios, but also walking them through like the real deep trenches of how that works and how it affects their chances in retirement and how they actually want to get there.
Yeah, so I think you're saying that you don't necessarily go after quantity. Right. It sounds to me like you're going after a very
high touch,
a very specific client,
very much,
and try to tailor your services towards that.
Exactly. Correct.
Okay. When you say global macroeconomics, that's something that kind of rings in my brain a little bit, especially right now. Right now, we're dealing with. I watch a lot of things and read a lot of things that come through my phone and news wires and those kind of things. And one of the things that is surprising me right now is the downturn in specifically transportation.
Yes.
This year, which I worked in transportation for 24, 25 years of my career, and that's never happened.
Yes.
This year, there's actually a job loss in transportation, which since I've been a kid, since I've been 19, it hasn't happened. So when you say global macro, what is impacting that? I mean, what is that's making that change? Because we're still buying stuff. We're still buying stuff online.
Yes.
Our spending habits aren't changing from what I can see.
Yeah, correct. So when 2020 happened and we shut down the global economy and then try to turn everything back on. You kept hearing everyone say new normal. It's fine. This is all temporary. You even heard the Fed say transitory a couple of times. Everyone thought that money juiced into the economy, rates being raised or late, are they going to come back down, would eventually mean revert to 2019. So people think, oh, we're going to go back to the office. Well, we're not going back to the office. Oh, well, it was just a supply issue. Well, now, like you said, transportation is really, really, really down. And so you now have Chinese companies trying to not just ship to Port of LA and on the West Coast, but now trying to take it all the way down to the East Coast. And so you have different products being bought because people need different things now. So you prioritize your home office over your work office if you're working hybrid. A lot of people brought a lot of a durable good purchase forward. If you were going to buy a RV, if you were going to put a deck in the backyard, if you were going to put a swimming pool in, if you were going to put that fence up, you did it already. Like that was something that happened when everyone was locked down and you had your four walls in your house to stare at. You either sold your house and bought a bigger one where you wanted it to, you sold it in the city, you moved out into the country. And so a lot of this, especially ground shipping, is affecting a lot of this when we're actually trying to come out of this. So now the yield curve has also been inverted for almost exactly 12 months. The 3-month 10-year, I know there's a lot of attention on the 2-year 10-year, but it's when short rates are higher than long-term rates. And if you were to ask to borrow money for, if I were to ask to borrow money from you, and I asked you to borrow money for you for 3 months versus 10 years, the answer you're going to give me on what you want in return is just going to be very, very different. And so when that happens, it's a warning sign generally of recession. Obviously, nobody can time recessions and you can't time markets and you can't really predict what's going to happen. But as PMI new orders continue to come down, they try to rebound. As hours worked start coming down, manufacturing is not coming in as hot as what it was forecasted. All these really affect the broad underlying blue collar economy as well. I mean, still also white collar as well, but trucking tends to be one of the bellwethers in the front line to get affected first. I mean, a lot of people still believe in Dow theory when looking at the stock market. The Dow transport is the first thing people look at for a reversal, for a downtrend, for, I mean, it's not perfect, right? Like no indicator is, but it gives you kind of an idea of, hey, what's happening and what do people think about it?
Yeah, and I mean, it's from where I came from. People watched our financials very closely. I worked for FedEx for 19 years, and our release, our financial releases each quarter would have an impact on the overall stock market very quick. And
everything.
And it was always neat to know what Fred, the founder, was often one of the advisors to most presidents, right? So whether it was Democratic or Republican, he was always in that room of economic advisors because he saw the information before anyone else.
Absolutely.
He could see. And
because nothing moves. It doesn't matter what widgets you're building on the West Coast if you don't have trucking to get it to the East Coast, so if you can't get it on a ship. So transportation is definitely the lifeblood of the economy, and that there's no exception for global as well. So it is difficult sometimes when you're looking at Baltic Dry Index or some of these other indexes, and you're looking at oil rates and liquid natural gas and what does some of this mining look like. But when you're actually looking at consumer discretionary spending and durable goods, transportation is your. Yep.
All right. Sorry about going off on a sideline. That was my. I don't know. That kind of rang true because I've been watching a few things, and that is a bit of concern right now. So we went through a little bit about your military background. You going through that. We've talked about getting into the financial advisor role. We've talked about your clients, how you plan on marketing them, and do you want to bring on the right client, not necessarily any client. So tell me why you focused on the small business owner as opposed to a traditional family of four kind of theory. I mean, the family of four seems a lot more of those in small businesses. So why was that your hot button?
Ran into the need.
Okay.
So originally thought I was going to go the traditional route, and then I was looking for who I was really going to drill down and serve as an advisor. And it turned out, just giving a couple of friends like, hey, I can look at your financials. I can figure out what's going on here, where you're losing money, where you're bleeding, or they're like, I'm making good money, but I'm having, issues making payroll at the end of the month, or they think that they're good to go with 200 grand in the bank, and they don't realize that they have 700,000 worth of liabilities over the next rolling 12 months. And so they're technically broke. And so that need just came from, or that turned from just helping individuals were seeing a need to, well, it looks like this is actually my niche and this is who I'm actually going to go serve. And so I went all in on that.
Yeah, the small business owner, it's, we get into it, and a lot of people get into small business ownership, and they know they have a need. They sell the right widget, right? So they're producing a lot of revenue, but they don't understand really their break even.
Yep.
And that's the one thing that I'm always, okay, well, and you sit down and you can do back of the napkin math and be like, hey, what's your payroll? And you can figure out break even within a few dollars really quickly.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, a lot of people are like, well, I thought I needed to produce $3,800 a week in revenue, and I needed to produce $4,800.
Yes.
That's why you're bleeding.
Yes. Or they contract a bunch of people out to help them build X widgets, but then they don't count that against their margin. And they think it's just operational costs. So they think they can just turn those employees up to infinity and that they can get infinite widgets out of them. Like, no, you got to hire more employees when you try and turn up revenue. Like, why are my operational costs like exploding? Like, well, they're not categorized correctly.
Yeah, and the other one that I always laugh at is the marketing, and
Yeah.
the marketing expense people have, because okay, early in my business ownership, and I think a lot of people's, they think, okay, well, I've got this business, and they want me to advertise with them for $400 a month. Okay, well, $400 a month is easy. I can, that's one or two jobs for this business, right, to do. Well, the problem is your marketing spend should be 12, at most 16, 19% of your business.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you got to put a multiplier on that $400 before you really understand
What are you actually getting for this?
Yeah.
Yes.
And explaining that to even marketing people that come sell you advertising and those kind of
Well,
things.
their job is to sell you advertising.
And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, you're $400. I need to make $5,800 off of your product. Well, and they're always like, where are you coming up with that number? And I go through this basic math. Okay, well, my marketing plan is 12 to 16%, and this is just that number.
Especially if you're more of a word of mouth business. I personally feel like the product offer is more important than the marketing, but I'm not a marketing genius, so don't take that personally, marketers out there.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, the we talk about. I was doing an interview with one of my friends at Stander across the street, and he's a digital marketing expert, right? He's got that down, and we kind of use the analogy of marketing is a lot of times just throwing stuff against a wall.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, well, let's see what works. And all of a sudden you get a return on something. You're like, that worked. Let's go down that path, right?
We'll split test everything.
But no, I appreciate that. So, but you've got enough exposure into those things to go, hey, traditionally most businesses in this, this vertical spend X number of dollars in labor. Let's say 20% in labor and 13% in marketing and, 4% in fuel. And you're able to go down that path pretty quick to go, you're out of line here.
Yes, absolutely. And depending on the industry, 20% in labor, you are having a great day if you're only spending 20% in labor.
Well, in most of the time, in a lot of industries, I mean, FedEx being an example, I think they're typically, I don't know, at most 30 total across the board. And where I came from in home-based services, it was 20% for the most part. But yeah, it's pretty common to hover in that 20 to 30%. So, okay. One of the things you wrote down and you wanted to make sure is big mistakes, right? You're not looking for a bunch of new clients. You're looking partially to help educate our environment. So tell me about some big key mistakes you see small business owners make.
Cut corners in bookkeeping.
Okay.
Like, it is the amount of dumpster fires, for technical term, that I see in many small businesses is they try and save money and cut corners, and they try and duct tape together their accounting plan where they think they're paying somebody to do the job and they're not doing it correctly, and then they end up with books that aren't even US GAAP compliant. They're not, there's no way they could even file a tax return from it, let alone derive how successful they're actually being in the business and where to even go from there. So bookkeeping is very much the foundation of being able to know your numbers and being able to even move forward. And another thing is after that in your bookkeeping is kind of like what we touched on earlier is how are the expenses being allocated? How is the revenue being allocated? Are you getting a clear picture on what the return is? Are you clear about what the return on your expenses are? For example, you brought up marketing and I need this X multiple on this Y spend. Do you understand those basic numbers? I get it. Most business owners don't want to stare at their numbers every day and they have people for that. I get that. But as the CEO of your own business, you still need to understand the basics of what your business is doing. Is there a margin? What is it? And where is your money going?
Yeah, and it is. I had multiple bookkeeping partners that I had, and the last one was outstanding. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that we noticed, it's the timeliness of the information.
Absolutely.
But it's like any data. Junk in is going to be junk out. Mm-hmm. So make sure you give, you have things allocated the correct way on the way in, and then it's easier for that bookkeeper to produce the end of month statements in real time so you can still make decisions. Because if you're not having your books closed for 3, 4, 6 months down the road, then
you got nothing.
Yeah, you're literally making decisions on estimates and assumptions and dangers and
you want to keep those assumptions and those estimates as small and few as possible, mm-hmm. so that when you're forecasting and you're trying to decide, how much working capital do you need? Can you afford this next project? Can you hire on another employee? You're using good information to make that decision.
Okay, what would be another one? Another mistake a small business owner makes?
Financing everything on credit cards. Okay. So where interest rates are at right now, I get it that people don't really want to take out term debt, but if you hit a rough patch, which a lot of businesses did after COVID, maxing out all of your credit cards, running out of cash, and then asking the bank for a loan is not the order that you mm-hmm. should be approaching that in. So again, that goes into forecasting, having either, ideally still not a line of credit, but knowing that, hey, we're going to need to do something in the business, a large expense is coming up, something is happening. So preparing for that term finance early so that you don't end up with 10, 20, 30% asset ratio as due within the next 12 months as credit card debt in your business is very important, because cash is king. And if you all of a sudden all your cash flow is obligated to service your debt because you didn't want to pay the current interest rate over a couple of years, doesn't mean you can't pay it off early. You just need to make sure that you have cash coming in to continue to pay all your bills. So that's a big one that I see is front loading a lot of debt.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of that, I don't want to say that some banks are better than others, and obviously some are, but
they aren't created equal.
Yeah. But I do think that it's important to make sure you have a banking relationship mm-hmm. partner, as opposed to just a company that just is a technology company that you just give money to and then
Absolutely.
They take the money back and all those things. So do you have experiences with small banks, and are they better for a small business owner, or when should they make those decisions and think about those type of relationships? Because I think your mm-hmm. advice is a layer,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
And I think there's another layer that probably works very close with you as small business
yes.
banking.
Yeah, so I work with a lot of small banks. There's no affiliation between any small banks, but I talk to a lot of their loan officers, mm-hmm. Especially the ones that I oversee all the SBA loans, which is the government entity mm-hmm. that backs 75% of the small business loans, so that the bank is even willing to take a chance on you. And so when you're looking at some of the larger banks, call it your Chase, your Wells Fargo, broad statement, call it several $1 billion. Their loan structure is very mechanical. There's not a whole lot of leeway or room. It must check all these boxes, and then here's what your choices are for your loan. Where you get into a smaller bank, a community bank, even smaller than a regional, they prefer the relationship banking. They kind of expect you to hold your payroll accounts with them. They would like your checking account again with them. However, they specialize in, let's say you're in real estate and you found a small community bank and they specialize in commercial real estate. Well, that's awesome. Or you're in the food industry and you find a community bank that's very comfortable, knows those businesses, and is willing to extend you a loan in the food industry because that's what they know very, very well. So matching the bank with your industry and what they specialize in is very important when you're looking for a small banking partner. So, if you specialize in, let's call it taxes, and I want to sell rubber chickens, and you're like, I don't know anything about selling rubber chickens. I sell tax services, or I finance businesses that do X, Y, and Z. You're not going to want to finance me because there's too much risk that you don't understand what I'm doing. It may be completely sound, but it's just not going to work.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, and I think it's important for those smaller community type banks to be involved in those, especially the specialized industries. There's generalities on okay, let's home services, right?
Yep.
There's a whole group of banks that understand those really well, and even the big banks understand those. But when you're going into the rubber chicken world,
or let's go back to transportation. So you have small banks that specialize in loans on ships, on loans on semi trucks, and loans on shipping containers, digging equipment, drilling equipment. Like, these banks specialize in these loans. They don't like doing the commercial real estate. They don't like touching the food industry. They just want to touch what they know because they know how to manage that credit inside of that loan book.
Okay. Right on. Okay, so I think we went through the questions in the normal layout that I have. I want to get into what I think is important for people in our community to understand. And so Goodrich Financial Advisory, you obviously create revenue for yourself. You've got to pay your lifestyle, your wife, kiddos, all those things. What is your give back? What do you do for the community? What do you do to support either other veterans, or what do you do to support the general community? What is your family involved in? How do you contribute to what we are?
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. So I volunteer a lot of time with the Houston Regional Chamber of Commerce. So these veterans who are running their own businesses, coming together, helping each other, moving forward. I render a lot of my services that normally would be charged for free for these individuals to make sure that they're on the right path, that they're moving forward. I also volunteer as one of the Chamber Pathfinders to make sure that people are getting plugged into the chamber, how they need to be in, meeting even with each other.
Good. So it's the Houston Regional Veterans Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
Is that accurate? Okay. All right. Perfect. And yeah, so I think you figured out by now, we found a good close tie-in with Dave and and some other people up there, Lou, and different people in your Chamber of Commerce. And, it's been a great marriage for us. You guys come up, we get to showcase what you do a little bit at a time of year when we need to.
Yep.
Not only, I hate to say that this 2 weeks, right? So we've started seeing the desert sand camo at the NFL games, and I think it's cool. It creates awareness, and it needs to be aware.
Absolutely.
But I also think that maybe these 2 weeks are not the only times of year to consider that. Absolutely. And so I was using the example with David Irvin and my wife. We were actually talking about this weekend about, hey, what are we doing for Christmas? All right, so my wife understands our son is spoiled. He's an only child, and my parents only have one grandchild, so you can imagine it's a multiplier effect there. Yeah. So we were talking about, hey, what do we want to do for Christmas? And we've already kind of purchased some stuff, and it's like, I think we're kind of done buying things for him at this point. He's at the age, he's 10, he's almost 11. I think we need to teach him some more values, right? Hey, how do we give back? And I think it's important for families in our community right now to understand, there's families that are in need. There's kids that didn't get the one present, much less all the stuff that my kid's going to get. So how do we teach him to give back to other families that might need it? And then, for the small business owner and the people in our community, there's also the veterans needs, right? There's the nonprofits that are around veterans. There's around the veterans community, where's VFW posts where they put amazing events together, and literally they'll take those funds, those items, and distribute them in the veterans community. I think it's the coolest thing, but I'm telling our our community to consider that, right? And then is there anything you've heard of coming up with Christmas around the corner, Veterans Day around the corner, that to say that, this is a great one that we need to maybe highlight a little bit?
Yeah, there's Sergeant Records down in Webster is doing a toy drive, Toys for Tots drive, and also collecting donations to go help kids in need for the holiday specifically. So it's another veteran-driven event. If you go to sergeantrecords.com, you will see the fundraisers that they're holding on in there. But yeah, that'll be on the 11th on Veterans Day. The whole goal is for them to raise money and awareness for children.
Yeah, the Toys for Tots, man. It's the U.S. Marine Corps that put that together to start with. But that's become quite an operation.
It really has.
Man, I've contributed to them in different ways. And, I mean, you want to talk about some money they're spending to support, kids in our community. It's a neat thing, right? So, all right, perfect. All right, so I've gone through everything I really want to go through. Is there something that I did not touch on that you think is important to include?
We talked a lot about what differentiates myself as a financial advisor.
Okay.
Just like not everybody likes the same card, not every financial advisor is, not everybody is my client. The next financial advisor, not everybody is their client. If you have a financial advisor, and you love them, that is amazing. Stay with them. It doesn't matter if they sell insurance or whatever. If they fit your personality and they are getting you to where you need to be and you trust them, that's amazing. But if you maybe don't feel like, hey, my advisor fits me very well, just go shop another advisor. It doesn't have to be me. By all means, my client pool is fairly small, but not all advisors are made the same. Not all advisors operate the same. Just like CPAs, just like accountants, they all have a different way of doing things, and just find one that fits you well.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, right? Having an advisor is better than not, and some people don't even have their first financial advisor, right? So I think it's important to quickly find one, but second, find the one that you can trust, love, and respect.
Absolutely.
Have somebody that maybe their goals, values, missions align with yours, so you can have a common sense conversation about money, where it's supposed to go, and they don't interpret that conversation in a different way, right? Yeah, no, I completely agree. And then there's also the concern of fraud. So a financial advisor, let's be frank with you, isn't going to send you an email soliciting your business. It's just that's not the way that industry works.
The amount of compliance that is required to mention anything, the amount of scrutiny that we are held to, which rightly so, right?
Yep.
If you're telling people what to do with their money, you need to be held to a very high standard and white glove inspection and the whole thing. So it is definitely nothing that any of us in the industry take lightly. It is something we all take very, very seriously, holding that fiduciary standard to our clients.
Yeah, they're not going to send you a random email at 3:00 in the morning that's asking, "Hey, did you hear about something in Saudi Arabia?" Or, that's just not going to happen. So if you get those emails, grab those, pick a phone number in the phone book of a financial advisor, go meet with them and go, "Hey, I got this email. Is this legit?" Let them tell you no. I'm telling you it's probably not legit, but let them tell you. But anybody anybody in our community that's a financial advisor that has any respect for themselves would answer that question for you.
Absolutely,
right?
100%.
So right on. Okay. How do people get in touch with Michael Goodrich at Goodrich Financial Advisory? Do you like a cell phone? Do you like websites? Yes. How do you go about this business?
The email is contact@goodrichfinancialadvisory.com, and the phone number is 409-904-5211.
All right, so repeat that, contact@goodrichfinancialadvisory.com. Okay.
And the phone number is 409-904-5211.
Perfect. All right, Michael, I appreciate your time this morning. Again, thank you for service. Thank you for your service. That is not a hollow thank you. That is, I told you why it was so important to me. I want to make sure you understand that. Happy Veterans Day.
I appreciate
Enjoy
it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you and your family have a wonderful Christmas. If you need any support from us, let us know.
Absolutely, and I appreciate you. Thank you for having me on.
All right, thank you, Michael.
Blessed day.